Huck and Carlton at Carlton Carnivores here, and I've got another interesting flower to share with you guys today. In previous videos, I have shared a couple of different species of aroids, the famous plants that include philodendrons that a lot of people like to try and grow as tropical houseplants, or the group that I am most familiar with are the corpse flowers and their allies, Amorphophallus. Some previous videos I've done included Amorphophallus henryi, which is a medium-sized species related to the Titanorum. Today, I actually have one of the smallest species in that genus that is in bloom right now, and like to share it with you. So in this pot right here, you can see the flower just sticking out, is Amorphophallus polyanthus. This is a species that is found in northeastern Thailand, possibly down into Malaysia. They like to grow in relatively open, seasonally dry, forested areas, and usually in soils that are fairly well draining but rich. And as you can see, when they bloom, these flowers are incredibly minuscule. Now, this species, polyanthus, is so named because usually it sends up multiple flowers at a time. So far, I've only been able to get one flower to go at a time. Maybe something in the cultivation conditions that need a little tweaking, but we'll see. So these guys develop a tuber underground that grows to about 10 centimeters or 4 inches in length. And that's as big as it will get. Most people are familiar with things like the Titanorum, Amorphophallus titanum, whose tuber can grow to be well over 300 pounds and over 4 feet across. These guys are on the complete other end of the spectrum. When these guys leaf out, they develop a single petiole that reaches up to maybe 6-8 inches tall, and then forms leaflets that are very broad, usually about 8-10 inches in diameter. So compared to the flower, even the leaf is actually rather large. Those leaves usually last for 4 or 5 months and gather the energy that the plant needs to store in the tuber so it can survive through the dry season, as well as you can see, these guys do not flower when the leaf is present, so they also require energy to actually bloom during the dry season as well. When they produce these flowers, they will develop kind of in a similar manner to the leaves. The first thing that you see is this sheathed little structure that sticks up out of the soil. Usually fairly quickly it becomes apparent whether or not it's a leaf or a flower, because the flower will develop this long skinny spadix that actually sticks out of the spade or out of that sheath first. And so the leaf just continues to grow upwards still in the sheath until you actually see the leaflets start to pop out. So these flowers only get to maybe 2-3 inches tall at most and have this kind of grayish brown spadix that sticks up. It's so small that the camera doesn't even want to focus on the flower properly. So it develops this gray-brown spadix, and this in most species is what produces the aromatic oils that actually attract the pollinators. In a lot of the corpse flowers, of course, they're famous for having really nasty odors, and so will produce things that attract carrion flies and beetles and things like that. This species, I'm not actually sure if it produces a scent at all, because I have never been able to detect anything from it. But it is almost certainly producing something that we probably can't smell as people, but other insects are likely able to detect. Perhaps this is pollinated by fungus gnats, since that's about the only thing that can fit within the actual spathe, which is actually a modified bract on the flower structure that is on the exterior, similarly colored to the spadix, kind of this drab mottled gray-brown color, little bit of green down in the base there, and you can see underneath the hooded top there's a swollen area down in the base, and that is actually where all of the true flowers are found, because this is not a single flower on its own. This is actually a flowering structure, an inflorescence, that is composed of up to 4 or 5 dozen flowers. And you can actually see deep inside the spathe there where the colors on the interior change from that creamy coloration to kind of purple maroon. You can actually see within there the yellow male flowers that have not yet matured. And in a couple of days, those will actually mature and release pollen. Right now, at the very base, the female flowers are below them, and they are mature. So they are receptive, waiting for pollen from another plant to come in and actually pollinate them. And the flowers mature at different times so that this plant encourages cross-pollination. Because while it's possible if you get the pollen out, you may be able to self-pollinate it and produce seeds, it's better genetically to maintain diversity for this plant to cross with another individual in the population. So once these guys actually finish flowering, all of that structure that we can see here will wither away, and the female flowers, the ovaries underneath, will begin to swell and form berries. Each ovary, each berry only holds one seed, and that seed will usually, once ripe, change to various different colors. Some species turn blue, a lot of them turn red. I'm not sure what colors this one changes to. I've never been able to pollinate, of course, but once ripe, those seeds will fall off, and in some species the colors may attract birds to eat them, so they're dispersed. In other cases, they're just dispersed by water and wind and will find a moist area. The actual berry will rot away and ferment, and then the seed inside, as long as it stays moist, will begin to germinate. The seeds do not want to dry out, otherwise they will die. These are not like most plant seeds that can survive long periods in dry conditions and still sprout. These require being moist all the time. And so, to grow this plant, you don't actually need a very big container. As you can see with my hand here, this pot is only about 4 inches across. The flowers, the plants are really tiny. So to grow them, you want a fairly rich but very well-draining soil. So a lot of perlite or crushed rock in the soil mixed with a good compost and loam. At the bottom, perhaps a layer of slow-release fertilizers, because these guys do like a lot of food. But of course, if you put something in there that releases all that fertilizer all at once, you will rot the tuber and you will rot the plant. So you want something that releases that slowly over time. And so when these guys are actually in leaf, in that growth, they should be watered regularly. Most of the excess water allowed to drain away, never allowed to stand sitting in stagnant water, because these guys will rot then. So the soil is always just moist, and just as it starts to dry out, you water it again. As soon as that leaf starts to die back, you want to stop watering. These guys are fine with being dry through their entire winter period. So stop watering, let the pot dry out completely, and then if you're lucky, if the tuber has fed enough, you may be greeted during the dry season by maybe just one, or if yours behaves more like the species should, often up to 6 or 7 flowers all at once within the pot. And that's all that I've got for that one. Hopefully in the coming months I'll have more species decide to mature and flower. The auroids have been a bit of a challenge for me personally, as I'm still trying to figure out what particular soil mix they like in this particular climate. Depending on where you live, sometimes a much more well-drained or sometimes a much denser soil is better for you. So it's just one of the things you kind of have to work on kind of on your own, figure out what recipe works best for you. If you'd like to see more species, if you have a particular plant that you would really like to see featured, if it's something that you've seen on my Instagram or Facebook accounts that you'd like to see a video about, you can drop a comment below. If you got questions, feel free to ask. You can also contact me directly, of course, by going to the website, carltoncarnivores.com. You can also find the database there, which I am slowly working on filling up with all the different carnivorous plant files, and hopefully I will start including some of the files for species like this as well. So if you have a particular species that you think maybe needs a file up there, also feel free to reach out and let me know. If you'd like to help support the making of videos like this and educational blogs on the website, please consider joining at www.patreon.com/hcarlton. Every supporter is greatly appreciated. The supporters that are on there right now, currently I'd like to thank you, as you're helping support basically the payment of the website, keeping that up and running. And As always, if you'd like to see more photos, short videos, and so on, just stuff that I like to take photos of and talk about day to day, you can always find me on Facebook, Instagram, or even TikTok now at Carlton Carnivores. And until next time, I'm Hawk and Carlton, and this is Carlton Carnivores.